Namaste. Welcome, everybody. Before starting our satsang, I just want to invite you to follow just simple advice. In the bottom of your screen, you'll see some icons. There will be a time for question and answers, and you can simply press rising hand, and then I will see and I will invite you. So don't write questions. I will try just to answer. I will allow you to speak, and then you'll be able to put the question, and I will try to answer your questions. If you are new with this system, don't worry. I'm also new, so we are learning together. I'm assisted by the beautiful Hridaya team of friends, and I'm grateful for this. So it's the first time of such a online satsang for me, and maybe for some of you as well. So let's start. Let's start with a short moment of centering in the heart. Please close your eyes. Keep your back straight. Relaxation. We bring the awareness in the heart. A feeling of intimacy. The joy of being. The serenity. The peace. We gently open the eyes. During this satsang, I'm going to speak about aloneness and solitude, about confusion, the perception of time and trust, about conscious shocks, about the shift of consciousness that this period invites us to step in. First, I'm going to speak about the difference between solitude and aloneness. These two words, solitude and aloneness, refer respectively to the serenity and the suffering of being by ourselves. So solitude and aloneness, we can say, are simply two different states of consciousness. They are not referring to external conditions, but about how we receive, essentially how we perceive these times. And I will start with a beautiful poem by a great Indian mystic, Kabir. He was Muslim, he was a Sufi, but he was also very much practicing yoga and knowing about chakras and about nada, the subtle sound. He said, don't go outside your house to see the flowers. My friend, don't bother with this excursion. Inside your body, there are flowers. One flower has 1,000 petals. That will do for a place to sit. Sitting there, you'll have a glimpse of beauty inside the body and out of it. Before gardens and after gardens. And Kabir was referring to this inner subtle physiology of the garden, the inner garden of our being, which can be anytime explored and admired. And he refers to this 1,000 petals flower, which is that reality that encompasses everything. This 1,000 Sahasrara is the symbol of completitude, which is indeed in connection with the top of the head, but is also in connection with the heart, is the expression essentially of any portal, of any gateway to infinity. And that's why before gardens and after gardens, so before and after any phenomenal aspect of the world, inside the body and outside of it, there is this glimpse of the beauty of the heart. There is this glimpse of the ineffable. And in a similar way, Byzantine monk who lived in the 11th century, Simon, the new theologian, said, sit in your cell, it will teach you everything. Sit in your cell, it will teach you everything. And he was referring to the tiny room of a monk, but he was referring at the same time to that cave of the heart, guha, it is named in the Oriental tradition, this cave of the heart. Sit there and you'll learn everything. His principal teachings of this great mystic, I appreciate him very much, this great teacher, Simon, the new theologian, where that any human being can reveal God, can have a direct experience of God. And in those times, this was named theoria, but theoria was not just dry theoretical things, but theoria in Greek means literally contemplation or direct experience of God. So this interiority can reveal and can give us many, many lectures, many lessons. We have loneliness, which is a state that is painful and negative, is when we feel alone, cut off, estranged from other people, from the world, from ourselves. In a way, we feel ourselves unwanted, unimportant, unnoticed, humiliated by this very sense of being alone. It can happen, and that's why I said that it's essentially a state of consciousness. It can happen even when we are surrounded by people, even with friends or people we usually know. Still, this feeling of loneliness can be there, which is a depleting experience. It's an experience of not fitting, of not resonating, of being not an inability, inadaptability to what is happening around ourselves. Somehow is this sense of punishment, rejection, something that depletes us and feels always that is something that is imposed on us. That's why aloneness brings confusion, struggle, alienation, fear, sometimes even intense fear, even panic attacks. And essentially, this is happening because we miss this center of reference. We are used to refer to others to help, to find help and support in the outer world, and the social activity is the only way in which we can alleviate this sense of aloneness. But when we find this center of reference in our being, this feeling of struggle, of self-rejection, even self-hate, of loathing, is dissolving. And then we can experience solitude, which is the positive part of what is happening now. So such measures like those which are taken now in many countries can generate this sense of aloneness for many people. And we will learn how to shift this from aloneness to solitude, which represents a very inspiring and creative state. It's a state in which we are perfectly serene, at peace with ourselves, happy, or if the circumstances are not about happiness, it's at least to be in peace by ourselves, to enjoy our company. And that intimate company Kabir was speaking about. Solitude can also help us to get in touch with and engage with the spiritual heart, with our true self. It allows us to reflect on ourselves, on our life. It's such a proper condition to self-inquiry, to inquire about who we essentially are, to remember this. Often, solitude is therefore a springboard for self-awareness, for a greater creativity, fresh insights, new growth, and is regenerating. It can be so regenerating. Solitude is something we choose consciously, or at least in situations like this, we accept in a sense, with a sense of peace. Solitude grounds us in who we really are and enables us to radiate this peace and serenity to others. So it is, we can say, a necessary condition which we need from time to time, at least, to look for this solitude. It's interesting what Blaise Pascal, this 17th century sage, French mathematician and physicist and theologian, he said, all of humanity problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. it feels a little bit strange or shocking, such an affirmation. But if we contemplate on it, we will realize that it's true. All this agitation of the mind is an expression of this inability to be with yourself, to sit in yourself, to sit in your heart, as Simon, the new theologian, would say. So sometimes in times like now, these poses may forced upon us, but instead of feeling overwhelmed by worries and fear and boredom, which is this aloneness I'm referring to, this can be a beautiful time to investigate our life and our motivations behind our actions and choices, which much more decide this detachment. So in this way, we can objectify the nature of our personal impulses, and then to go beyond them, coming closer to the real meaning of our existence, to this naturalness of being, to this stillness. Solitude can also purify the mind in order to see more clearly what is false and what is authentic in our life. So solitude purifies. Loneliness, on the other hand, is undesirable, is negative. Again, it's just about a state of consciousness. It's just about another condition of our mind. It seems a punishment. We want to fight against it. It can be hard even to admit that we are feeling lonely, because this is like a silent recognition that we are unwanted or insignificant or easily ignored, and this wounds us. Of course, it wounds the ego. Of course, this is a lesson which needs to be taken, and we may pass through this aloneness in order to come to solitude. And then solitude, on the other hand, is a gift. It is perceived as a gift. It is something that we choose for ourselves, or at least accept. And solitude, if we look in all great spiritual traditions, we see that solitude had a very important role. So solitude was a very powerful ingredient for spiritual transformation, and it was not only for a spiritual path. Great artists and creators found solitude as something very inspiring. So solitude is selfish and conditioning. Loneliness is selfish and conditioning. Solitude is deconditioning, is bringing this freedom of the ego. Loneliness is uncomfortable and agitated and grasping, while solitude is a space from which clarity and stillness can emerge. And these times, this moment, can be such a moment, because this moment has imposed sobriety and awareness which are like monastic virtues, are inviting us to simply meditate, to learn about introspection. It is a very special moment to honor this present moment, this now. It is a time to reconnect with ourselves. So religion comes from the Latin word religere, which means to reconnect. And essentially, so etymologically, religion is simply a way to reconnecting to what is essential, what is important for us. The heart, the spiritual heart, our friends, our family, those in need, God. And we should see these times in this way. Otherwise, if we used to be a problem for ourselves, we used to be a problem for others, now we will continue to be a problem. And I mentioned before, in all that is happening now, try not to be part of the problem, but part of the solution. So we are part of the problem when we are just feeling this sense of fear, this sense of distrust and anguish and agitation and grasping and selfish tendencies. And we are a part of the solution when we find this stability in our being, and then we can radiate this and support others and support our times. And I'm going to speak later about how we can be part of the solution. Now, it is important to understand that in this solitude, for example, maybe you heard, most of you, I'm sure, heard about this dark night of the soul. It's an expression coming from St. John of the Cross. And whenever we have problems, difficulties like such a time, we'll say we are in the dark night of the soul. So the dark night of the soul is associated with a lot of difficulties and problems that we may experience. But what St. John of the Cross was speaking when he referred to this dark night of the soul was not exactly this. It was something much more than this, something much more than this, in the sense that in spite of that, in spite of those difficulties, there was faith for him. So for St. John of the Cross, always there was faith. In all that struggle, still, no doubt. So the dark night of the soul is a condition in which we are not just lost in desperation. We have a stability. In spite of some difficulties, there is a stability. We trust. And now there are people who are simply optimistic, who are trusting in their values or just hoping that God will help us or whatever, perspective we will have. And this life philosophy will bring this optimistic or somehow a positive way of seeing life. But this is not even just about this. Actually, St. John of the Cross speaks about a deeper stage which he named the dark night of the spirit, which is a stage in which even that intimate reality you rely on is not associated with mind, with concepts, with ideas, my idea about God, and so on. Nothing like this, no attachments, nothing. Just a total surrender to that emptiness, to that freedom of being. For example, while being in jail, St. John of the Cross lived in the 17th century and, or sorry, in the 16th century, and he stayed in prison for around 1 year. So there were quite intense, challenging conditions. He didn't have a window in her cell there. And still, so it was what we would name the dark night of the soul. And he wrote poems like The Living Flame of Love. There are 4 stanzas, and I will say to you just the last stanza of this. He said, "How gently and lovingly you wake in my heart, where in secret you dwell alone, and in your sweet breathing, filled with good and glory, how tenderly you swell my heart with love." So this was the dark night of the soul for St. John of the Cross. How tenderly you swell my heart with love. So speaking about solitude, we should understand this necessity of being stabilized, of having a solid center. And we can say that the essence of this poem, or the essence of this last stanza, is silently written in the heart of all of us. It is there. If we feel it, if it becomes active, this is solitude. If it is not manifest yet, then this is aloneness. But of course, we don't reach a clear and strong place of solitude automatically. It's a process in which we learn and we develop this ability slowly. We learn how to go beyond any obstacle, and the main obstacle would be exactly this sense of aloneness. So first you find yourself alone, and then is this process, and then you find yourself. So first you find yourself alone, then you find yourself. In that deeper dimension. And we can say that solitude is a time of no time. It is a time of no time because the normal reference of time is not there, really. Even if we refer to this normal way of the way in which the time is passing, so the days of the week are not so relevant. It is Saturday or Sunday, it is Monday, it is weekend, is the same solitude. And then this points to something which is beyond just this flow of the phenomenal time or psychological time of different experiences, and is just a way of stabilizing in what we really are. So solitude is a time of no time. Solitude is the way of being while not being. And we will speak about this, how the ego diminishes. This would mean no being, not being in that limited sense. In Hridaya, we somehow prepared ourselves with solitary retreats, with meditation, silent meditation retreats, with dark retreats. Many people did this, and I'm sure that this is not a disturbing time or a time of creating a lot of agitation for those who stabilize themselves in solitude. For somebody who did 1 month of dark retreat in darkness, this freedom from boredom or agitation of the mind for sure is there. And speaking about the positive effects of solitude, of such times, we can realize an increase of freedom, of an increase of creativity. And there is more time for contemplation, for spiritual growth, for looking at ourselves, and then creativity in different domains. It is remarkable the case of Isaac Newton. In 1665, this was a time, it's interesting, it was a time of plague. It was the bubonic plague in England. That plague brought much more death. So the risk of death was around 30% till 90% for those who were not treated. When treated was, when the treatment was there, the risk of death was less, but still much bigger than we experience now with corona virus. So when in those times this plague was raging in England, Isaac Newton, which was a new and completely undistinguished graduate of the Cambridge University, was somehow forced to remain in solitude, to spend not just 1 month or 1 week or so, but almost 2 years, 18 months actually, 1 year and a half, in the family's countryside house. So in that solitude time for Newton, he discovered the law of universal gravitation. He proved that the white light is composed of all colors. He proved and made the extension of the binomial theorem, and he invented the infinitesimal calculus. And all of them, all these discoveries were done by Newton before the age of 25. And this just by being in solitude. In the Taoist tradition, it's even in Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu said, ordinary men hate solitude, but the master makes use of it, embracing his aloneness, realizing he is one with the whole universe. Buddha definitely attained enlightenment through solitude, through no social interaction. The same was the case for Saint Anthony of the Desert. He spent, this was a great Christian mystic. He was actually one of the founders of the ascetic mysticism. And this Anthony of the Desert spent 20 years in isolation. And then it is said that he brought this sense of isolation. He took his solitude with him and shared with all that came to him. So this inspiration, this taste, this freedom of being in that intimacy of your being. And the same did great mystics like Saint Seraphim of Sarov, a Russian mystic. And also in the Tibetan Buddhism, we have the amazing example of Milarepa. He spent 50 years in caves. And we have the example of Ramana Maharshi, who stayed in Virupaksha cave in Mauna, not speaking for more than 16 years. And we have the example of Jesus, who spent 40 days in the desert, and many such examples that show that this time with yourself can be such a beautiful time, and it's good to honor it. In solitude, we can also get an intimate understanding of the natural world in a way which is somehow entirely deprived from the human perspective. So it's what in yoga is named samyama, identification. We are freed from this consensus reality, from what usually human beings are accepting or considering that is real and the only important things. And then you are like a child, as Hafez said, and for no reason I start skipping like a child. We start again seeing the world in wonderment, and this is what this solitude brings. There is a beautiful book, maybe we'll have some time to recommend some books. This is Svadhyaya, this conscious reading, and in this time you can also read, and there is a beautiful book, Walden, of David Thoreau, which is exactly the experience of being for 2 years in solitude. So to be in solitude means not just to be with yourself, but to be yourself, just like this. That's why Thomas Merton, who was also very keen to solitude and made a lot of retreats, said that silence and solitude are the supreme luxuries of life. Silence and solitude are the supreme luxuries of life. I totally subscribe to this. And we should ask ourselves, if this is not happening to us, we should ask ourselves, how is it possible, or how and why? And contemplate. There is a secret here, and we can learn so much, because actually in solitude there is a lack of mirrors, a lack of reflections coming from others, and because of this the mind becomes more rested, or learns at least to become more at peace. In solitude you don't need to prove anything to others. You become more natural. Your gestures are freed from embarrassment and clumsiness. I mean, you can be clumsy, but it's just with yourself, and then this doesn't have that charge, psychological charge of feeling guilty or such things. So there is nobody to judge you, to compare yourself with. And this is freedom. Otherwise, this comparing and judging is exactly what Maya is. We get sucked into Maya whenever we are just starting judging and comparing with others. And this would be a practice for these times, to simply look and observe if there is judgment. And whenever we feel a sense of competition and so on, to drop it, or to at least acknowledge it. This would be the first step. So the tendency to compare, to judge, is the very essence of Maya. Maya, as you know, in the Oriental tradition, is a quite renowned or quite known concept, means illusion. But literally, etymologically, Maya comes from matri, which has the Sanskrit root ma, which means to measure. It's quite similar with English, to measure, ma. And so this ma means to measure, to compare, therefore duality. So in oneness, there is nothing to be measured. In this holistic view of the heart, there is nothing to compare with. And we are freed from duality. And in solitude, we are also freed from anticipation and projections and a need for a future. Why do we will need to define a future now? So what will happen in 2 months from now, or whatever? I feel no need for this. It's more peaceful to just stay with what we are now. So why to anticipate? This is a completely different approach, and now we can give ourselves some conscious shocks. I used to think about, to plan that tomorrow, the next week, what will happen in a month from now, so much trying to be in control on this. And now what? I don't really know. And I can be at peace with this, not out of laziness or ignorance, but just out of peace with ourselves. And this is like giving ourselves conscious shocks. So solitude is not a negation, but an affirmation. It's not about negating the world or negating the future or something, but about affirming the source of the world and of the future, which is this now. And when you realize this, you start giving yourself conscious shocks. Me here now. What a miracle. So solitude is an affirmation of this wholeness of the heart, of the beauty that is now. It is such a freedom in this. Thus, the ego, the superficial layers of our existence tend to diminish and glimpses of truth, of this pure being, start appearing. It's like going deeper and deeper into yourself, and meeting no one. We usually tend to live in a world of objectification. Others take us as objects, as a body, as a mind. We take others as objects. You are handsome, you are like this, you are smart, you are like this. People project all these qualities on us. In solitude, there is a chance of this identification, this objectification. We don't need to express ourselves in concrete forms. And then what? Then we will say, like Dogen, the founder of the meditative Zen tradition, the Soto Zen tradition, said in a poem, "What do attraction and hate matter when I'm here alone, listening to the sound of the rain late in this autumn evening? What do attraction and hate matter?" In the end, nobody can live in our place or die in our place, nor suffer in our place. And this is what we can call an essential solitude, the solitude of existence. It's the ultimate nature of solitude. Rainer Maria Rilke, this great poet, said, "We are solitary. We can delude ourselves about this and act as if it were not true. That is all." So we stay in this solitude. We stay by ourselves on this threshold of eternity. So in that step beyond our personality, we are by ourselves. We can be helped till a certain stage, but that ultimate threshold cannot be passed in flock, cannot be assisted. We are in solitude there. It can be frightening as the light is frightening for the bat, but when we put aside the attachments, there is just joy. And we should also acknowledge the fact that nobody really revealed her own true nature. Just living a bourgeois life is simply not possible. Just with that common social life, we cannot go deeper. It's true, there is this karma yoga, the yoga of acting with detachment and love and compassion and awareness. So there is also a dissolution of the ego. There is a beautiful symbolism in alchemy, the symbolism associated with the pelican. Pelican is a bird that, according to the medieval tradition, would wound itself, the mother would wound itself in order to feed the children when the little birds, the little pelicans, when there would be no food or not enough food, the pelican would create with his beak wound here in the heart, and then in the heart area, and then the little birds will drink that blood. In alchemy, the pelican is the symbol of the, and this blood is the symbol of the pelican, is a symbol of that projection power, that transformative power, which can generate that alchemy. And there are usually represented 7 little babies, which are the 7 metals, which by this touch of the sacrificing nectar are transformed in the metaphysical gold, in the spiritual gold of pure existence. In Rosicrucian tradition also, so in Christianity, in esoteric Christianity, also the pelican is the symbol of Christ, because it's just this sense of sacrificing. And I'm speaking about this simply because this power of sacrificing ourselves is something that can blossom in solitude, this availability, and this makes us a part of the solution. There is in solitude, as in beauty, a sense of coming home, a feeling of settling all things in perfect order. And then in that solitude, there is oneness. We embrace the sky, we embrace our heart, our soul, everything in this now. It is this grace in the midst of all that is. Then solitude simply means intimacy. That's why it is worth to make this a quality time, a time in which we should meditate, to do self-inquiry, to practice hatha yoga, to read books. There is also in our times, and now I'm going to start speaking about the solutions. We hear about a shift of consciousness. Many people in spirituality spoke so often about our times as a shift of consciousness. We are somehow looking for a miracle, like the second coming of Jesus, or the end of the Mayan calendar, or what is happening now with this coronavirus situation. And then we somehow hope that the portal will be open and we'll be taken in paradise and we'll experience freedom just because we live in these important times of change. This is, I would say, a naive perspective, which is still ego affirming. We are the chosen ones. Now, in our generation, is the time. And what we are looking in such a vision is a kind of flock redemption. We hope that everybody will be taken through this portal, and this seems to be the only chance for our lazy, selfish tendencies. But again, this is not true. Of course, we can speak about astrological moments, about such special moments of portal, but essentially, again, the heart, your heart is the portal. Just listen. Me here now. What a miracle. There is a beautiful poem by Hafez. He said, everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him? And if I would say only one word now, is trust. Trust. Because on the other hand, now indeed is the sacred time we were waiting for, we are praying for. It seems paradoxical, but a real shift of consciousness requires a shift of paradigms, a shift of the way in which we are seeing our lives, ourselves. And I'm again not following just naive statements that everything will be very well after that, it is just a wave and it will pass and then people will be better and so on. It's not just about an optimistic view. It is an openness to the unknown in full trust. It is the same trust I was speaking about when we were referring to St. John of the Cross. It's an unfathomable faith in being, in the heart from which everything flows, all that is shared, the serenity, the strength, the courage. Now, some people are blaming the Wuhan Institute of Virology and saying that this virus may escape accidentally from biosafely level 4 laboratory. Other refers even to a deliberate biological attack. Other people are blaming their governments for not taking before proper measures and not providing enough devices and protection and stuff, which is not now so relevant and so important, even accusing governments for genocide. It may be legitimate, but in a deeper way, this is somehow irrelevant. Why am I saying this? Because such an accident in a laboratory could happen later. In 5 years or 10 years from now, this possibility was and continue to exist. This is just a consequence. We need to understand that this is just a consequence of our civilization, of this technocratic world we are living in, this science without conscious, life without real consciousness. Is a consequence of our alienation. So this is the real reason beyond what is happening now. And again, we need to give ourselves conscious shocks. So shocks are happening, but there is a need to give ourselves conscious shocks. So again, in a conscious way to observe this and to realize that something is going wrong. And when you give such shocks, or you are conscious about them, it's like a waking up from a dream. And at the same time, it is now, the first period after a long time when our planet really is rejoicing itself, starts rejoicing itself. It seems paradoxical, but animals are really happy now. They are free to manifest themselves, to play. We all heard about this beautiful thing that the dolphins are coming again through the Venice canals. The ozone layer is regenerating, the ozone hole is shrinking uh, so quickly now. Even the seismic activity of the Earth, CNN reported a few days ago that the seismologists affirmed that um, seismic activity of the Earth is quieter because of this external layer of the Earth is less busy. The Earth seemed to become quiet. So things are bringing. So it's good to contemplate on this. Things now are changing. The planet is finally celebrating the diminishing of that human activity, which is poisoning at the physical level and sometimes at the mental and psychological level. And it shouldn't be so. The human being should be a protector. Speaking about our consciousness or our capacities as human beings, we can speak about the royal status of humankind on this world. So humankind is like a king, but humanity now acts like a very cruel king, greedy, lying, betraying. Humanity is betraying his mother, the earth. So a king that is betraying the mother, the king that ignores his brothers and sisters, the animals, the forest, the rivers, the sea, the king that wants to conquer everything, the whole space. And it is a need to be stopped. It is simply the way of Tao. It is this balance, the way of nature. We need to learn again this naturalness, the middle path, as Buddha said. And we are all karmically responsible for accepting this status quo, for accepting this situation that is happening in this world. We have so many signs that global warming, which created so serious problems. Last year in India, for example, people fought for water. The monsoon coming later create problems in agriculture, and people were threatened of not having enough food. And with such a thing, it may happen, it may happen to humanity to hear that because of the lack of water in India and because the government couldn't deal with the relocation of people and so on, 100,000 people died, which would be more than the people who died because of the coronavirus. Maybe many of us would take this as news. People so far away, we are here in a good condition, nothing really happened. But now it is touching us. Now it is so present. So it is such a wise solution for preventing other cataclysms or other problems that human beings could do. This is, we can say, of course, and this is not about ignoring those who are suffering and those who are fighting for life in these times. But again, we are all responsible for this. And we should feel it deeply. And this should give us a conscious shock. We made such a mess out of this planet. We are making such a mess out of this planet. So give yourself conscious shocks. Don't stay just in fear or just in personal stories. It happens, of course, people continue to go on their old tracks. The main worries about their finances, advertisement, TV are going the same way, is so irrelevant now. Because it can be such a beautiful trigger for self-remembrance. We don't need to go that way anymore. Uspensky, a great spiritual master, was speaking about what he named obvious absurdities. He said that in his childhood, together with his younger sister, they had a beautiful book about these obvious absurdities, like a man carrying a house on his back, or a cart with square wheels, and things like this. But the funny thing about that book was that there were also pictures which were completely normal. So he couldn't see any absurdity there, even though the book was about obvious absurdities. So he couldn't see, and this was very intriguing for him, and he was very impressed by that. And then later on in his life, he came and looked at that book again, and again he couldn't see anything as an obvious absurdity, which is a very subtle reminder that even in what seems to be so normal or so natural, there are so many obvious absurdities. We are having now a cart with square wheels in our times. We are petrified in routines, and we also are considering that, yeah, nothing can happen, or we cannot do anything, or we cannot change. Is like creating bumpers. So there are such situations like what is happening now, and this threat for humanity. This thing can happen if this was not a virus escaped from a laboratory. It can happen if this was not about human mistake or error. It can happen. So this can happen. And then it is that obvious absurdity of this old technological world and all this way in which we are going unconsciously in a direction which we don't really want. There is so much alienation, there is so much confusion, and we simply don't know what to do. And that's why I'm saying, give yourself conscious shocks. So a conscious observation of such bumpers or buffers, these kind of things that tend to attenuate this absurd situation that is happening now. So it's like muffling the striking explosion of awareness. We can be aware, but because of these subconscious buffers or bumpers, we are not. So this artificial life is created when we just reinforce years and years a wrong and ultimately stupid life. of indulgence of every kind of weakness, of ignorance, of pretense, of lack of effort, of drifting, of trying to avoid unpleasant facts, of constant lying to ourselves, constant lying to ourselves, of constant abuse to others and to ourselves, fault-finding, self-justifying, a sense of emptiness, wrong talking, and so on and so on. So as a result of these bumpers, of these subconscious muffers, the mind becomes dirty. The subconscious mind is in this mud of projections and expectations and works mechanically, wrongly. There are also artificial routines that are created there and keep on going, is artificial way of working. So we may want to wake up, and people are speaking about this importance of waking up and the importance of having a special time now, or to be spiritually awakened. Yes, but this is not happening just with a meditation, just with a collective meditation. It helps, definitely it helps. But we need to understand that it's needed much more. And in that solitude, we realize that we are responsible. And however a person may wish to wake up or lead another life, to change, these artificial routines, these buffers stop us, interfere with our good intentions. That's why what I suggest, and with this I would want to conclude, and then I will open to question and answers. I would suggest something that would be similar with what Gandhi did with his non-violence. So the timing there was also crucial. It was the time of global Great Depression in the 30s, when Gandhi started spreading his ideas. So it happened in a proper time, and this time is also very prolific for such a situation. And then there were people around him who were committed to non-violent objectives and tactics and the way in which they approach things. So Gandhi invited them to this self-sacrifice, this wisdom of the pelican, the capacity of just going out of their fears and personal greediness and need for toilet paper and so on. So this requirement of self-sacrifice. And then what was essential in this change of India, which can be a change of the whole planet, and if there was a collective transformation, this can be also collective transformation, but I'm not saying, and I'm not speaking about this, I'm speaking about transformation that should start with ourselves. So what Gandhi did for India, try to do for yourself. This non-violent resistance, not in a social way first, but in another way. I refuse to be taken by ignorant gestures. I refuse to go into these old patterns. I learn non-violence to myself. Proper food, proper actions, not serving the ego, just remembrance. So it's not about just actions, proper actions, or proper food just because I like my body and I want my body to be healthy, but because of a sense of honoring. Because, as I said, we are somehow all responsible for this. And if we stay in a passive state in which we say, okay, it's what is happening, something we are not able to do anything, then the things will continue to be the same. And we can definitely do a lot, even if we are not politicians, and just saying a no to this, just giving ourselves conscious shocks, just realizing that life should be different. We as humanity, as the king of the Mother Earth, should be those who are taking care of all this, those who are protecting and inspiring and bringing so much happiness and love and protection and compassion for all that is. I deeply believe that this is our calling and that this is possible. So essentially is about rediscovering what is important in ourselves or for ourselves, and then eliminate everything else. I'm also in a quarantine time now, which is as it is. And it's a time of looking at the garbage, how much garbage. It's a time of being aware of resources and being aware of any act and being with yourself and evaluating the day, redesigning the time, the day, and eliminate what is unnecessary. I remember when my stepfather died, there was a big workshop with a lot of stuff which was useless. So it took me quite a lot more than a few days just to empty all that. And I look around and I'm imagining that there will be some people who would need to empty after my death. And I don't want to leave what my father left, simply because we need to change something. We need to give these conscious shocks. Me, here, now. In the Zen tradition, there is a question, or this approach is like this: when everything around you is confused or in fear, is confusing and in fear, simply close your eyes and ask, is the existence that is confusing or my mind? Is this world that is confusing or my mind? Of course, the phenomenal world can appear as being confusing, but the existence, essentially, this naturalness, is what it is. There is a Buddha saying, a Buddhist saying, everyone appears as a Buddha in the eyes of a Buddha, and everyone appears as a pig in the eyes of a pig. So our existence is experienced according to our state of consciousness. The cosmos has never complained about its busyness or fear of dissolution. So unless we can look on life differently, we cannot really remember ourselves. That's why there is nothing urgent, nothing really critical except awareness. I would conclude with a short poem by Antonio Machado. Between living and dreaming, there is the third thing. Guess it. I will open now for question and answers, if there are questions. So you can raise your hand, online hand, if there are such questions. Yes, Alexei, namaste. You need to, yes, speak. Yes, you can speak now. If there is no clarity, I will try with another Luis. So I will mute Alexei and then Luis. Luis, please. We learn. I click unmute. Now I think it works. So please, Luis, are there questions?
Hello?
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that I would be on microphone, but I put it in the text in the chat.
Yes, I said with the text now it will be a little bit too difficult, so I prefer.
I will state my question. What would you advise as a practical first step towards reaching self-awareness or enlightenment, or for someone who is not used to solitude and meditation at all yet?
Yes. Well, we can start with simple steps. Just simply, closing the heart, the eyes, and bringing the awareness in the heart. So this would be a simple gesture in which you just start feeling a sense of reconnection with yourself. This is the very essence, the very core of meditation. So we are speaking about self revelation and self inquiry, but really everything starts from this reconnection with ourselves. So it is a way of being, just in the common life, looking for different things in this almost hysteria of consumerism that is happening in normal times, and even now sometimes a little bit. And then you come back to yourself and try to see that you are more than just your agitation, your habits, and just this contemplation, me here now. What a mystery. Then there are many other ways of remembering ourselves. So, for example, when you pass a threshold, so you go out of a room and enter another room, just be aware and remember yourself. I am. So these simple exercises make it as a constant habit to every hour you can put your phone to announce you every hour 1 minute of self-awareness. And then it's not so much about how to come in touch with ourselves. It's, I would say, more about how we free ourselves from the old habits, from these buffers of the subconscious mind. And this, as I said, can happen when you simply inquire yourself, this, what is this? What is all this? I'm not willing to continue in this way. And then you start simplifying. Whenever you make a decision different from what you used to do, to take care more to your gestures or to the way in which you are, to the way that you decide to have your food, to simplify, essentially to simplify your life. And this decision to simplify, this would be a way of becoming more aware. And as I said, it's like a non-resistant, as Gandhi did that. He addressed this for the whole country. So people with no spiritual experience, they were open to this ahimsa, non-violence, resistance, which was not based on violence, but on this equanimity, this peace, this commitment. It's a commitment to change something in yourself. And then things will change. So I will go to other questions. Elena, welcome, Elena.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, Elena.
I'm glad to be here. My question is a follow-up question on what you said about these conscious shocks, and I'm not sure that I understood very well. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes. So usually in our times, we experience shocks. Now, a lot of people are in shock because things that used to be in the way they used to be in this kind of comfortable life are not like this anymore. Suddenly, a lot of threat is related to their life, to so many things, their finances, their lifestyle, and so on. So it's a shock. But a shock in itself is nothing wrong. A shock is simply a way of cutting with these habits, or you realize that the old strategies of life are not working anymore. And this shock can create, as it happens to many, just fear and alienation and crisis, and we are running for the next comfortable zone. So we are running for that because we hate this unknown. Or on the contrary, it's an act of faith when we are welcoming this, because it's like this dark night of the soul. It can be challenging or difficult in a sense, but on the other hand, you have that stability in the heart. As you remember, St. John of the Cross said that swollen, that love that swollen my heart. So it is, and it is not really a dark period, because in such a shock or in such a period, a lot of beautiful things can appear. Otherwise, we are just paralyzed. We are like homeless at home. You know, people who are just scared now are like homeless at home. Or you can be at home in your heart, and you can be at home everywhere. So giving yourself conscious shocks is simply about contemplating on what Uspensky named those obvious absurdities, contemplating at the way in which our life is flowing, and we may find a lot of things. So my need to buy a new thing, or do I really need this? How this is supporting the technocratic world we are living with, and we are a consequence of it. As I said, somehow we are all karmically responsible for this, because we are all going in that direction. And it is our responsibility to decide that things can continue or not. Some things should stop. But it's not about, you know, making social revolutions or making a new party about this, because it's not really a change unless a shift of consciousness, unless, and this cannot happen unless shifts of paradigms are happening. When we learn to live in humbleness, so it's not about creating a new party or creating a social movement about this. If it will happen by itself, but is about this humbleness. And this is a conscious shock. I was participating to this alienating world. How? Well, in so many ways. When I'm contradicting myself, or when I'm saying the same thing again and again in a repetitive way, sometimes I may just stop and say, well, but this I'm saying, this I said 1 year ago, and it's the same. Nothing changed. I said that some things would be different, and still they are not. And then is a conscious shock. Or I said that I don't want to continue in this way with my life, the way I don't like this and that situation or things that are happening. And then I am finding myself with the same frustration, with the same way of dislike, and with the same problems 1 year after or the next day. Then all this is like a pointer. Who am I? Is it more clear, Elena?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
you. Bye.
My hand up or not?
Alexei, yes, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sahaja. I'm grateful to speak to the Spanda Bear again. I attended your retreat in September, and it's great to have you here again. My question is, you're speaking about trust, and I wonder how surrender sort of falls into how we should think about surrender. Does this have to do with trust, or are these two separate things? You spoke a lot about surrender in the retreat, and I wonder if the way you were talking about trust right now is the same.
It's exactly the same. We are essentially speaking about the same all the time. We are speaking the same using different concepts or different attitudes or different perspectives. Of course, surrender is not possible unless we know to whom or to whom should we surrender. And we should surrender to that intimacy of our being. And then when that intimacy, when that sense of truthfulness is there, at the beginning it may be just vague. At the beginning we just have a sense of coming back home or a sense of intimacy with ourselves and a taste of being at peace finally. But then it is more and more this trust in the heart. And you are guided by that. So you see, you feel how you are guided by this tremendous trust. You feel, I mean, at the phenomenal level, now there are challenging moments, and is good. So it's good not to live in a bubble, and it's good to be aware of all the situations and all that is happening, and to have your heart open for compassion, to have your heart open for the suffering, and to be grateful at the same time. And you can be grateful if there is this trust, which is a surrender. You flow into something much deeper than that. It's not again, it's not just the optimistic way of seeing life. It's not just about this. It's much more than this. Because this trust is a way of honoring, surrendering to that heart, to that essence. And as I'm speaking indeed in retreats, I'm saying that surrender is our main chance to realization. Because without surrender, as human beings, without this capacity of surrender, we wouldn't be able to love. We wouldn't be able to go on a spiritual journey. Surrender is exactly about this trust in what is beyond, in that unknown. Not, again, not an unknown in a phenomenal where we don't know what will happen in this, what would be the outcome or this of this, or it is a surrender to that trust that no matter what, and we can even be prepared while the exponential curve is increasing. The exponential curve of suffering may appear in this world, and I'm present there. At the phenomenal level it seems overwhelming, but I am present. So I'm present because of this trust. I'm present because I surrender to that which seems to be unknown, but then it is so well known, on the other hand. When we come in touch with our heart, we know.
Okay, and like, would you be able to re-explain how we focus on the heart and the exact space that you're talking about? Because I think that might be helpful.
So, as I said, we bring the attention in the chest area. Ramana Maharshi, this great yogi, recommended to center in the middle of the chest, a little to the right, one finger away to the right. But this is, in the end, not even so relevant. It's about a reconnection to bring the mind back in the heart, is like detaching from the rational thinking and staying in that, is more than just feeling, is staying in that sense of intimacy with yourself. I am at peace with myself, which brings this sense of reconnection, this sense of trust, this sense of joy. So it is simply like this. And it's not just about the point. The point is like a gateway, is about an inner attitude. The area of the chest is just a support for this sense of surrender, learning to trust your heart, trust your heart, trust the heart. Again and again, come there, again and again. Initially, it seems that is nothing, or I remember somebody said, or after 4 retreats, said, oh, I really understand what you are speaking about. So it may take some time, but coming and whenever there is this sense of freedom, this is the heart. Whenever there is an awareness of this present moment, of this beauty of being, this is the heart. It doesn't need to be located here, is then all that is that embrace and that trust in the present moment, or surrender to the present moment, is another way of saying surrender to God. Surrender to the beloved. This is a nuance which the mystic tradition brings. Maybe surrender to the present moment is too abstract and is missing this nuance of love. Surrender to what we are is a surrender to the beloved. It's a beloved, it's this infinity, and then the present moment is the beloved. The present moment is the beloved. It's, again, we are speaking about the same.
Mm.
And this conscious shocks and this inner revolution should be about this. So more we are accepting, and we are accepting a life which goes in this alienated way, and it's now more and more obvious. And saying no to that, and saying yes to that trust and to that intimacy is what starts this shift of paradigms. Yes?
Yes, and lastly, I have been experiencing conscious shocks. It's just I am asking myself the question of what do I do with these conscious shocks, such as the conscious shock of acknowledging of the responsibility that we all have with what is happening right now. Is it then about surrendering to the shock, or?
Yes, this can be, but it's not for us to find now a social solution, or I mean, if this will happen, and maybe we, I mean, at the world level, some guidelines for a conscious life may come, or inspirations how we can simplify our life, guidelines for coming back to this love, guidelines for learning to love more. But I wouldn't go in this kind of metaphysical approaches. I would rather realize, well, yes, I am somehow contributing through this ignorance, through this way of continuing the old patterns. I'm contributing to the life in the way it is on this planet. So a conscious shock would be a determination to change myself, to transform myself. This would be, so all that, question about what is happening now and how we should consciously respond to this, it should come in the end to this. Yes?
Yes, thank you, Sahaja.
Thank you, Alexei. It is quite late, and I know there are still some questions. This will be the last question I answer, is time.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey. I feel this stability in solitude, and I feel peaceful and connected in love. And but I feel like sometimes my body just gets lonely, and I feel this skin hunger, and I just let it be, or I hug myself when I feel like my body needs it. But I just wonder, why? Is it just because we live in a human body, or does it mean that I need to go deeper? Because I do feel connected to the bigger picture, yet I feel like...
I understand this. So there is no need to blame yourself for this. It's natural to feel this longing for caress and embrace. And there are different ways or many perspectives related to this. There is indeed a way of understanding that this love and caress that you are looking for is always there. So this love we are looking for and this caress is done by the present moment. We are caressed by the present moment, right now. And at the same time, it is legitimate to feel the urge of being touched. Indeed, you can touch yourself as a way of, and caress of yourself as a way of feeling this self-love and this serenity and peace with yourself, a way of appreciation. And when I'm speaking about solitude and the joy of solitude, I'm not saying that this is something that should be for everybody and for all our life. So we pass through such periods of solitude, and yes, such longing appears. You are missing your lover, or this missing to be touched, or this need to be touched. You embrace all of this, not blaming them, not considering that this is something wrong, or it's just a desire to be denied, or all is there. It is a way of appreciating even more the touch of your lover. It will come. So sometime after this period of solitude, it will come. And then you'll be more available, and then you'll be more able to appreciate the beauty of such a touch. So it is a serenity and a peace in accepting that, yes, I need such a touch, or it would be so beautiful if I would be touched now by my lover, or my body feels this. My body feels this, so what? It's just a way of learning how to honor and to wait and to be grateful for what it is. So in this awareness, in this presence, everything starts sharing its beauty. So we can see in a different light. And what seems to be painful or difficult is not. I mean, it can be in a certain level, like it was the suffering of St. John of the Cross in the prison. So it was not that St. John of the Cross was just in a state of ecstasy and happiness, and then he wanted to stay longer in the prison. Actually, he just ran away from prison. So it's not that you accept or you agree with all the conditions, and still there is a joy. And that is more than. And solitude, yes, comes with some conditions in which, yes, you may not be touched or caressed now. And it's good that you feel this, because you are alive, because you are present. Maybe for some it's like, oh, it didn't came to me. I don't need to be touched. It's good to be, to long for being touched, or to hug, or to express love. But we learn to express in other ways, and we learn to feel this caress and touch of the present moment. Does this make sense to you? Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. I feel that now it would be good to conclude. So let's conclude with a short moment of centeredness and quietness. Keep the awareness in the heart, the trust in the heart. We gently open the eyes. Me here now.